It was a
Yeah.
big
Yeah.
negative event. There is so much value created when a drug works. And when it doesn't work, there's a lot of value destroyed.
For sure.
From Morgan Stanley, this is Hard Lessons, where iconic investors reveal the critical moments that have shaped who they are today. You'll hear about 2 out of consensus calls, one that was on the money and one that wasn't. Today on the show, Gene Hynes, CEO of Wellington Management, with Amy Ellis, Global Head of Senior Relationship Management at Morgan Stanley. Jean became CEO in 2021 after spending her whole career at Wellington, where she was a portfolio manager and industry analyst in healthcare and biotech. Her deep and thoughtful approach to research continues to inform her strategy today.
Jean, thank you so much.
I'm so happy to be here, Amy.
You've seen so much. You've accomplished so much. We've all had moments in our career where we've had to make decisions, and we didn't know how they were going to turn out. Here on Hard Lessons, we're here to explore those with you. Can you set the stage now for us on a bet that you made and how it worked out for you?
There was a company called Schering-Plough, a pharmaceutical company. It's probably most well known for the drug Claritin,
Sure.
which is a staple in everyone's life. It's now over the counter. Claritin was coming off patent in 2002.
Okay.
And they also had this new, what I thought was an exciting cholesterol agent, Zetia, that was in development.
Okay.
So I had this company that I had not owned. I knew Claritin was coming off patent and that the new drug was also going to be launched. And so that's where it gets a little tricky because you have very high margin drug going off patent, and then you have a new drug that you have to launch and invest in.
Yeah.
And then you have uncertainty about the trajectory. And
What gave you this confidence? What gave you this fortitude that this was the inflection point? This was the time to get involved?
people probably know statins. There are millions and millions of people on statins. And statins are an amazing medicine. But at the same time, there was lots of data that showed getting cholesterol even lower than these medicines could do it was very important. And then Schering-Plough had a drug, Zetia, that was a brand new mechanism. So the bet was that it would be complementary to the statins. It wasn't going to replace the statins.
Okay. So how out of consensus were you?
So I think I was out of consensus at many points in time.
Okay.
But I think the big call was that Zetia was going to be a successful drug, and its profits, it would replace the profits of Claritin.
Wow.
I think over that decade, that actually turned out to be true.
You got it right.
And I got it right over the long term. Like Schering-Plough probably was one of the best pharmaceutical investments in that decade.
Huge. That's huge.
But there was a lot of ups and downs in between.
Were there moments you thought you misstepped? You thought you got it wrong?
This is the science and art of investing. In 2002, Claritin's patent went off. And what happened in the years prior is that you began to have consolidation in the retail drugstore chains, moving from this independent pharmacies to CVS and Walgreens, like much more consolidated retail chain. You also had the emergence of pharmacy benefit managers.
Sure.
And so by the time Claritin went off patent, and the retail drugstores and the PBMs were all incentivized to switch as fast as possible. You went from a scenario where drugs lost their patent and lost their sales over 5 years to losing their sales over 1 year. I think it surprised me. It surprised the pharmaceutical companies. It surprised everyone in the market.
So a ton of new learnings.
During that time. And so what that meant was it wasn't going to be a perfect line of Claritin going off and Zetia going up. And then the question was, how does a company that's losing a 99% gross margin drug still invest in this new launch? And that's where my earnings estimates were too high because we were all learning at the time. The company was trying to not lower its earnings estimates. And so they were doing things that probably didn't benefit the launch of Zetia because they were trying to smooth it and reduce profits. They were also launching Claritin over the counter. I'll tell you a funny story is my husband comes home and he brings home private label Claritin. And I was like, you can't do that. You need to buy the branded. But it was a sign that actually branded Claritin was priced too high. Because they were trying to price it to save their profit.
During that journey, what other things did you realize about long-term holdings of big companies?
So I think what held me in the stock was the fact that they did change management. So we had a new CEO come in. His name is Fred Hassan. I had a lot of admiration for him. But my biggest lesson was that in 2003, when he came in, I should have known that he would have wanted to invest. And in order to invest, what he did is cut the dividend.
Yeah.
And he lowered the earnings so that he could invest. Now, I am on maternity leave, by the way, when this happened, with my fourth child, who is at that point like 5 or 6 weeks old. And you do not want to have a stock that has a dividend cut.
While on maternity leave.
While on maternity leave, and it's one of the biggest holdings of the firm.
Yes.
And so it was the right thing to do from a management perspective. Like, he created more value by making those very hard decisions. So for me, the lesson learned is I should have known this. Like, I should have known that he was going to do something dramatic to create the long-term value.
So you said that always stayed with you. So you've never missed that since.
I've never had another stock that had a dividend cut.
I love it. I love it. So Jean, can you tell us how Schering-Plough journey ended?
Yeah, so in March 2009, Merck and Schering-Plough agreed to merge. It was a partly cash and partly stock transaction. It was a big transaction. So interestingly, Merck bought Schering-Plough, and actually Pfizer bought Wyeth. I owned both Schering-Plough and Wyeth. The interesting thing was that, so I hold these stocks. I hold Schering-Plough, and of course there was a pop. Like, that was good. Yeah. But then the price of Merck went down so much. And actually the price of Pfizer went down so much. I thought the acquisitions were actually quite good for Merck and for Pfizer. And so what I had to do is something I had never done before, is take a step back and say, if people begin to realize that these are actually really opportune and good value acquisitions for these companies, those stocks are going to go up. And I will never get the full value of the value creation of Schering-Plough. And so what I did within a month or two is recommend that we sell all of our Schering-Plough and buy Merck instead. And so in the end, it was actually the stock part of it too I had to get right, because I could have got all the analysis right, but if I hadn't done that move, which I had never had to even think about before, but because they were such large acquisitions and some of it was in stock, I had to figure out like what was the right thing to do to actually make sure I created all the value for our clients.
And looking back, I mean, you have to think that was such a good move.
This was a great acquisition for Merck.
And
what came out of that was not only that Zetia and the cholesterol franchise became a good franchise, but in Schering-Plough's pipeline ended up being Keytruda, which is now the largest drug in the world. It really changed Merck's future. I always like to say, whenever something works, you actually can celebrate for just a short period of time. You go, yay, for like literally a day. And then you have to actually decide what to do.
Okay, so let's shift here a little bit and talk about an out of consensus call that didn't go so well.
So giving you a little bit of history, Elan was a drug delivery company based in Ireland. We did not own it, by the way. We had a very negative view of Elan during the 1990s. They had a very high earnings growth, but in my view, it was very low quality earnings growth.
Got it.
But then in the late 1990s, they bought a company called Athena Neurosciences. Now, we were the largest shareholder of Athena Neurosciences. We knew that company. They were developing drugs for multiple sclerosis and for Alzheimer's. They were based in South San Francisco. It was a very odd acquisition that this sort of lowish quality drug delivery company would buy the South San Francisco, very exciting, high science company. And so we had a very positive attitude towards Athena, but all the issues about earnings quality were still happening with Elan. I was right. Like, the earnings quality was really, really quite low. But then at the same time, the pipeline of Athena was beginning to emerge. And so we began to buy Elan for the pipeline of Athena Neurosciences, that at some point people would realize what they had, and you'd have this massive uplift of quality and excitement about the future. There's two parts of Elan that were difficult. One was that last bit of low earnings quality came out after we bought it.
Okay.
And this is another lesson. So when you have a profit and loss statement, you have revenues and you have cost of goods, and you can't really hide those unless it's fraud.
Yeah.
But you also have this other revenue line.
Okay.
And my lesson is that I didn't dig in deep enough to that line.
Interesting.
And so there ended up being things that were non-recurring, and so it wasn't real earnings. The lesson for me is, and I say this to all our young analysts, like, you need to understand every line of the P&L.
Yes.
Every single line, and you can't just put a plug in. You have to really dig.
So interesting.
So that was another thing. I'm never going to let that happen again.
That's fair. All right, so that was the first leg of Elan, and
then the excitement happened.
Yeah.
Amy, the excitement happens. They bring this drug for multiple sclerosis to the market. And the first generation of multiple sclerosis drugs, they took patients out of wheelchairs. Doctors would say in the early 2000s, I don't have people in wheelchairs anymore. But at the same time, they were drugs that were difficult to take from a tolerability perspective. The way the drugs work, they caused people once a week to feel like they had the flu.
Great.
They were amazing inventions and innovations and not optimal. So we were looking for what was going to be the second generation of multiple sclerosis drugs, and Tysabri was it. And if you did the research, this mechanism really reduced the inflammation that was going into the brain. Patients felt great. And the drug was approved, and then it was taking off like faster than almost any drug.
Yeah.
It was like, wow, this is going to be such an amazing.
You got it right. Yeah.
And I was underestimating the launch.
Wow.
That's how positive it was. So this is February then of 2004, and I am in Japan. And I remember being out to dinner with a Japanese company, coming back to my hotel room, and the red light blinking. So I listened to the message on the hotel phone, and it's my trader back in Boston saying Tysabri has been pulled from the market. And I'm sitting there in my hotel room saying, what? Like, how could it possibly be pulled from the market? And the reason Tysabri was pulled from the market, it was so good at reducing inflammation to the brain, it was almost too good. There was a very low incidence that allowed a very, very rare virus to start in a very few patients, but the outcome was death. And so, like, you can't, unacceptable. Yeah. And so I'm like across the world in a hotel room, up half the night. I had to leave a message for the portfolio managers on voicemail. Like, I wasn't at a computer. You didn't have Blackberries. You didn't have iPhones. Yeah. So I'll tell you, the next day, the stock is down 90%. I come out to the car, and my great colleague said to me, he's like, Jean, there's nothing you can do today. And we're here in Japan to do a job for our clients.
Yes.
And we need to focus on the job at hand. And there was nothing you could do. The stock was down 90%. So it wasn't as if like you were going to save a lot of money by selling it. Like you can get to it next week. So I want to tell you how difficult this was. I have a wonderful colleague who loves facts. And he said, Jean, do you know that this is the first company with a market cap over 10 billion to go down 90%?
Thanks.
It was a big negative event. I ended up doing a lot of work in the ensuing months. I didn't sell my position. I just kept it, and I did work. Elan ultimately got acquired by another company. It wasn't a great holding. It did recover from that 90% because Tysabri ended up coming back on the market. And it really did teach a lot about science. It really told you can do better for multiple sclerosis patients. But now, 20 years later, there are really good drugs for multiple sclerosis that balance that safety and efficacy and tolerability.
Interesting.
These are high risk. Like, that's the beauty of biotech and pharmaceuticals. It's not good enough to just understand the science and what's going to happen. You have to understand the financial implications. When you're really researching science and you're on the cutting edge of science, it doesn't always go how you want.
Yeah.
And so there is so much value created when a drug works. And when it doesn't work, there's a lot of value destroyed.
Sure. So what did you learn when Elan opened up down 90%?
I think the lesson for me is you need to make sure that you're taking in all the potential risks in an area of medicine where it's cutting edge.
Yeah.
And you can't always know everything. And then how do you react?
And at that moment, you decided to hold.
That moment, I decided to hold and do research and wait and see, like, would the drug come back on the market? I could have just stopped and said, I'm not going to do this.
Yeah.
There's probably an opportunity cost for that research too, an opportunity cost for holding where it could have been in another stock. But the decision I made was to hold, and we did recapture some of the value, but those are the decisions you have to make every day.
You went back to your trusted process. Yeah.
It's when you do this deep research and then you have an insight about how the future of medicine is going to change in a way. And then it could still be another 5 years till it gets to the market. It's when do I have enough dots connected? If I waited for everything to come out in phase 3 trials, we wouldn't never made any money for our clients.
We sat together 4 years ago as you were ascending into the CEO space. What have you learned? What are the hard lessons of being a leader?
I became a managing partner in 2014. And in my first year, I started working with a coach. And one of the things she asked me early in our coaching, she's like, do you want to be CEO someday? And I literally said no. No, they hadn't even crossed my mind, actually. Wow. And the reason for that, I think, was there aren't that many role models, right? There aren't that many role models. I had this image of CEOs, and that was not me. Visionary, super creative, aggressive. That's not who I was. But when I took a step back, actually, the CEOs that created the most value and that I admired the most also didn't have those characteristics.
Interesting.
They were really this combination of optimists, strategists, humble, authentic. Those were sort of the characteristics of the CEOs that I admired the most.
So how long did it take you to think about, hey, I could do this?
It took about a year before the inkling came in.
Okay.
It was a big decision to make, too.
Yes.
Was I the right person? And if I was the right person, what did I want to do? How did I want to spend the last decade of my wonderful career at Wellington? Is this how I wanted to spend my time?
5 years in, what are you most proud of? And what itches at you still?
The asset management industry is going through a lot of change. So one of the things that I can recognize is that I've seen the biotech and pharmaceutical industry be stable and be unstable.
Yes.
And I feel like the asset management industry is going through one of those changes.
Yeah, sure.
I think what I'm most proud of is shifting. Of course, we're going to have to pivot, but changing the mindset of 3,000 people that, we can pivot.
Yes, for sure.
We have to pivot, and we can.
Yeah.
And change is scary and exhilarating.
Yeah.
We're all in it together, and we can shift and create the next 100 years. We're about to have our 100th year anniversary, and so there aren't many companies that have 100 years. So really, it's what I'm most proud of, my laying foundations that will help the next decade and the next decade after that. And when I think about great CEOs that I've interacted with over time, I feel like they've done that.
Yeah.
It's not about what they did in any one year. It's not about the stock price during their period, even though I think that's how CEOs get recognized. It's about what do they do to create the value for the next 10 years or the next 10 years after that.
Amazing. Jean, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much. Look forward to having a discussion in another 5 years.
Thank you for having me. You can probably tell, Amy, that I'm very passionate about biotech and pharmaceutical investing, and it was really fun to kind of go back and reflect on those journeys. So thank you for having me.
Fantastic.
You've been watching Hard Lessons, an original series from Morgan Stanley. You can listen to an extended audio version of this episode on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information about the series, visit morganstanley.com/hardlessons.